Hi guys, so this is I know we're meant to do a response to T's video, where we talk
it's
about...
not my video, eh? It's on your profile, but it's my video. All right.
Where we're discussing faith and
All
work.
right.
And anyway, so just for context,
But then you're white, I got to deliberate in swagger too.
Tina, I don't know how to edit, so
Okay,
this is how it's going to go. Anyway, so just for context, I think the reason I was asking the question is because there's a lot of questions or gray areas around work and purpose, and so the reason I was asking T was because I thought maybe he could offer some insight. So some of the stuff that we'll be mentioning are based off the Bible. So if you don't necessarily interact with the Bible, you might float when it comes to things like verses per se. But at the heart of it, I believe that God's word, whether or not you believe it is true. And so some of the things I think T will talk about are true, even if you claim not to have a faith. If you practice them, I think the result will still be the same.
True.
But anyway, so T, you want to give us some context around work?
So, we're going to respond to some questions, but before I get to them, just some basic foundations that will apply for every question we answer. One is that when God created us as human beings, the first thing he instructed Adam, who was the first person God created, to do was to work. Now, his job was not the most elaborate job, it was to name animals, but it was to work. And so just having that as a foundation, that God created us for work, that work has an intrinsic value in every human being because it's part of what we're created to do on this earth. And therefore work is not sinful, it's not bad, it's not something that we ought to be running away from or escaping, but figuring out then how do we make the best of it, because it is part of what we're meant to be doing. In fact, on another day we may be able to discuss this, but the truth that even in heaven we won't just be bumming. There'll be roles and things for us to do. So work is never something that we're going to escape from. It's part and parcel of who we are, and it's a good thing to figure out.
So one of the first questions we often get, and I used to ask, is I often used to feel like when you work in secular... Okay, so in Christianity, generally, this is pop Christianity culture, there's two types of fields you can work in, industries. One is the ministry industry or the Christian industry, which is like a pastor, right?
Yeah.
Which is where T used to work. Or ministry organizations let's say like donate food, like I think Tia Fund is one of them, where you're an NGO but you're Christ-based. Then there's a second industry, which is what we used to people call secular. So if you work in agency, if you work in Diageo, if you work in Pernod Ricard, if you work in, Safaricom, so if you work in an industry that's not, whose primary objective is not to minister or evangelize about the gospel of Jesus Christ. So a lot of people, even me, I always believed, and some of the questions I got was that, when I work in secular industry, then, am I fulfilling God's purpose? Does God actually have a purpose for me at work when I work for an alcohol, company?
Just to demystify something, I think there's a misused word more and more that's growing in the world now, and that's purpose. I think there's this large mystical thing that every person is trying to attain, and apparently once you attain it, boom, something magical happens in your life, will never be the same again. And I don't think that's true. And so people, the other day I kept dissing millennials are always changing jobs, but I think part of the problem is that is searching for a feeling inside that will come when you find that job that was created for you. And I don't think that's necessarily there. And so when you ask yourself, if I'm in X company, can I find purpose from it? Even if the company is not necessarily doing something ministry-oriented, yes, you can. There are basic things God has said in His Word that technically are a purpose for each one of us when it comes to work.
For example?
Excellence. Work as unto the Lord, work well, that you may, earn the respect and favor of even your colleagues. There's a statement I read the other day where someone was saying, the reason Christians are not getting respect at work has nothing to do with persecution for their Christianity. It simply has to do with the fact that they're not good at their job. And so the first purpose is excellence, is to be really good at your work such that you earn favor from everyone you're working with. And that's an amazing purpose to have with wherever you're working.
Which is me to my second question. I think what someone is asking is, if I'm working for a brand that creates, mixed condoms, you know what I mean? And is primarily used by people who are engaging in sex outside of our confines of marriage. And I'm the marketing head. I think
you can still ask yourself, and it's important to ask yourself and ask God, what is it you want me to do here? One, with the relationships I have with the colleagues here. changing perhaps their mindset towards the view of condoms. Or, for example, you could be working in an alcohol-based company, and as much as you roll to market, you're able to create responsible marketing that helps actually curb the level of underage drinking and driving when drunk, as examples. And I'm not here to tell you exactly what you can do in your space, but it's asking yourself, what would still God value in this sector, in this company, that I can still do for him where he has opened a door for me to be in? The reality is, in whichever door God opens for you, there is something you can do there for him. In the relationships with the people around you, with your clients, in the products you create. Asking yourself, how can I create something that makes this world a better place? How can I transform this world, this country, this city by doing my work and doing it well? What aspect of my work and something I am passionate about can I do that will begin bringing some sense of meaning and purpose to what I'm doing? So it's almost us finding a meaning and purpose in our work and asking ourselves, what can I do within it? Rather than hoping to find the job that gives us that meaning and purpose.
A question, is there such a thing as purpose though, to be honest?
Yeah, purpose is just an objective. Why do we make it an hard work? It's an objective. It's something I'm aiming or seeking to attain.
Yeah, but because everyone knows...
So, for example, if it is down for underage drinking, that's a purpose, to try reduce the level of underage drinking.
But it feels like God has a bigger purpose for people. That's what all pastors... I mean, that's what they all say in this big sermons. That's why people buy books about purpose. So is it that we are believing a lie? Or is there actually a major purpose that once I figure it out, my life is now...
Ultimately, every Christian, your one purpose in life is to build your relationship with God, is to grow closer to God, is to know him and then be with him in eternity. And therefore, everything else we do around that is tied to that, including our work. How does your work tie in with your relationship with God? Does your work tie in building your relationship with God? So things like prayer around what you should be doing with your work, things like work that does not take away from your relationship with God, in terms of the things you're being told to do at the workplace. So that's how it ties into purpose, because ultimately the purpose of a Christian is to grow in your relationship with God to the point that you now then spend eternity with him.
I mean, one of the things I think, there's a really good study we're doing that I think is good for everyone. I'm even surprised you didn't mention it, is that...
I have to do something for you.
Okay, thank you. Is that God is more concerned about the people than he is about the company. Yeah. So that gave me some perspective in that when you're going to an organization, there's two, because God is always working through us to reach out to people. Is one, the people who are my customers, how can I, in my position, actually impact them for God, or address them, or something that God is seeking to address in them? Or two, my colleagues. Is there some space for me in that? And I think if you always ask yourself, what is God doing with the people around you?
God is always at work around you.
He's always at work around you. So even if you're in an alcohol company that sells alcohol, but isn't God concerned about the customers? Isn't he concerned about you and your colleagues? And someone could argue, yes, but why not start an organization that's anti-alcohol? Well, I'm like, okay, fine. But what about starting an organization that creates better rules or regulations around the alcohol space?
And those are debates we can have further, and you can ask more questions if you have.
Yeah.
But that's the basic idea.
The second question was, is there such a thing as work-life balance and harmony, and how would God want us to interact with that?
Okay. I think that part of the problem is we have a dichotomy in this world that has been encouraged to every believer. Not every believer, but that is encouraged to many Christians and people, where you view work and faith or family, or they're all separate segments and boxes. And so when you say harmony, work-life harmony, is how do I cause this box called work, this box called my faith, this box called family, my hobbies, to all sort of come close to each other and balance out? But I don't think that God created us as one person who is able to express themselves in all these things, including in work, hobbies, family, and especially one that touches each of those, your spirituality. And so I think the first step in creating work-life harmony is to stop viewing them as separate. That your work and your family never touch. And so how can these boxes live and exist within each other? So you may have a work function. For example, there are times Marion has had work functions that have been on a weekend or late. And so for many people, that would mean not having time with family. But there are times she's decided, hey, let's go for this gig.
Oh, yeah.
And that helps you still match family and work. Now, that's a very basic example, but it helps you see what I'm trying to say, is that these boxes are not necessarily separate and are fighting against each other. I know people, I have a friend who loves ball and then got hired in this company and got the company's HR to fund cash where him and all his colleagues go play ball in the afternoon. that he has been able to bring something he loves into this space, and the spaces are not always in competition with each other. So can you have work-life harmony? Yes. Does God want work-life harmony? Yes. Should you fight for work-life harmony? Yes. I use the word harmony more than balance because the weight may not always be equal at different seasons in your life.
Actually, I don't believe there's such a thing as work-life balance. I think you decide. I think you have to decide which one is going to take priority in certain areas, and then I agree. We try and create a harmony amongst them. I mean, for me, even like people will tell you, I'm all about a company that I enjoy working for. And for me, the criteria is they make it easy for my family to be integrated. They make it easy for my hubby to be integrated. And so I remember one of the companies, the second company I ever worked for, I don't know if I can mention them, but they were so, I mean, those guys used to send us for like trips to like Watamu, and we'd have like Masako 7s or whatever it is. And they'd always be like, we booked the room. The rate is for 2 people. So if your husband wants to join you, he's free. And I'm like, what? I think the first time we went to Watamu was because of them. Or we like, if we'd have gigs like concerts, they'd always ask me, does your husband want to join you? What do you want to? I mean, I just felt like they felt like as long as you're doing your job, the benefits of the job, you can extend it to your family. And so for me, one of the ways in which I've decided the companies I'd like to work for, the ones I make a deliberate effort to work for, is the ones that appreciate and make it easy for that harmony. You know, those ones who telling you have to go for a trip, you know, and you're like, it's in Machakos, can I go with my partner? You're like, no. Or tickets is you're fighting for them as though you exist as an individual in isolation.
And I acknowledge not everyone here will be able to
of course,
such a company.
of course.
But one is asking yourself then, how can I help create such a culture in the organization? I mean, if you're in a position to influence culture in that space. But 2, fine, the company may be a bit more rigid in structure. And for you then it will be deciding, so this is a pie, and work has taken this large a piece of that pie. How do I make the best of the little piece of the pie that's left? And it may be for a season. And deciding for this season, this is the best I can do with regards to giving time to, these are the things in my life. But I still won't let them die. But I'm still going to work towards a season where I can be able to reduce this piece of the pie and give it more to these other things because they are of value to me.
But let me ask you, but you're insinuating as though there's not an issue with overworking. Because balance, I think that's the question, is what if I'm always working? And yet, again, if you go back to the Bible, I mean, God says he worked 6 days, he rested for 1.
And he didn't need rest. He's God.
So,
he's not like he can die of fatigue.
Yeah.
I think it's an issue of where your priorities and your passions and your heart is. Where you invest your time, your money, your resources is a reflection of where your heart is. And I think for many of us, we're caught up in a rat race that's making us make work an idol. So we're going to put everything there to climb the ladder and we cheat ourselves that it's for this season. I'm young, I have to make it now, and then I'll rest later. No, I think we've seen enough people later on in their age and it never ends. The rat race, you get too used to it, you don't even have rest. I've been around people who don't know how to not work perpetually, because they created that habit when they were younger. So yeah, it's possible that people are so consumed with overworking, but often it's because I know there's some way it's the employer, and you need to figure that out if it's the employer who's making you overwork. But the most people, it's yourself. You may cheat yourself to the organization, but it's yourself. You've created for yourself a sense of worth that comes from you working hard. You know, me, I work till 8 p.m. My job is so hard.
I'm so busy. Oh, my line is ringing all the time.
So you like that sense of you feel important
busy, yes,
because you're always busy. Or you're convinced this is the only way I'm going to get that pay bump. Yeah, and you need to just decide, realize that every decision has a cost to it, and realize that there's a cost you're making to the other elements of your life, and ask yourself, is this a sacrifice I am choosing to make? And I'll never blame anyone for it, having made that choice now.
I mean, one example I want to give is, Sarah. I mean, that's the lady we work with, the MD of MediaCom. And I remember when I was joining MediaCom, I asked her, because I'd been in agency before, and agency has a horrible work culture. And I kept asking her, so, I mean, the stage I'm in my life, I need to be in a space where my family isn't the one losing on that pie. And she was like, then you come and do it. You come and help me change the culture of agency where we can work, enjoy our work, and still be able to have that, harmony. And I mean, she's done it. To be honest, I think when I joined, people used to do late sitting. This is like when you work late at night and you're being dropped in your... I mean, Sarah would leave and ask, she'd ask people, why are you late sitting? What is the reason why you have to work late? Are you overworked? Then you need to shout. Or do you not know how to do your work and it's taking too long? Then you need to shout so we can also give you some help. And so it is very possible to still be in a high-performing culture, a high-performing organization, and have great harmony and rest, which, to be honest, is a God-given command, which is we need to rest. You need to practice rest. practice letting go, practice not always being in a busy environment where you can actually just hear what he's saying and replenish and refresh your body.
True,
right?
True.
Third question that was asked was, we talked about Christians and, work, but like, they're like Kenya top CEOs in Kenya, top 40, under 40. Where are the Kenyan business people or CEOs or MDs? Why aren't we seeing them? Why aren't they coming out? Why aren't they visible? Is it because they don't exist? Is it because they do exist, but they do a pretty bad job and therefore don't want people to know? Or three, is it that we just don't know where to find them? And I think this is somebody was asking from a perspective of where is the motivation meant to come from if I can't even find it.
It was a young business person who just wanted to know, where are the role models and examples I can look up to in this city of Christians who are succeeding in business?
And
doing it the right way. And I know there are very many different Christian organizations that have trying to create like a kingdom-based Christian principle for business, etc., and have different Christians in there. And those are some of the ones you can interact with. But I know some of the challenges mariners have always had in some of these forums, summits. Fine, these guys profess Jesus Christ, and I'm not here to question whether or not they're born again. But we know that they have swindled their employees. We know that they have taken corrupt deals here and there. And so that question is very legit. Where are these guys who we can look up to, who have genuinely done it the right way and have succeeded? And I want to challenge us. Let's do this even before we try answer, because I don't think my point is to try and name people for you. Is tag someone who you know for real. Their character is legit. You can target them or their organization. Their character is legit, and they are born again, and you know their faith. I'd really be excited to know. I began working for an organization called Resource Global, and that's pretty much what we're trying to do, is to try to raise awareness of what it means to integrate your faith and work. And I'd love even to get a chance to interview some of these people and just hear their stories of how they have been able to integrate their faith and work and succeed in it. Tag, even if it's not business people, even if they're in the corporate world and you know they've done it the right way and their faith has still been unshaken and they're succeeding in that space and they're unashamedly living for God, please, let's tell us their stories. We'd love to know
and who
about
they
them.
are, so you can ask them. I don't know, was there another? I'm trying because I think I've summarized a lot of the questions. Yay! So this is so long, so I don't know. I think I might have to cut it into
multiple
two.
videos.
Oh man!
No, each question can be.
Oh man, I don't like editing of videos.
This is how this thing will be posted next month. Yeah.
I'll try and edit, but thank you for the questions. If you have any other questions on faith and work, I think T has a lot of. To be honest, I think if he had time, he'd probably do for you a really good exposition of.
Even if you
study.
don't ask us question next week, I may just find a topic which I have found resources on around faith and work, and we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
But please send the questions so I don't have to just talk about my own things.
But I think you would do a really nice study if you could on work in the Bible and just seeing that different people had different jobs, different work. But I think there's value in questioning and some of the things that he's mentioned just on what God says about what we should be doing while we're at work that can just give you some guidance, right?
Thanks. Catch you next week.